Hey everybody, me again, Jimmy Smith. Now, I was thinking, as I was watching Khamzat Chimaev taking on DDP, about dominant performances, not just in title fights, but lineal title changes. And I was thinking about it. This is how my brain works. I was watching a fight, and I started going, man, I don't know how many times I've seen that before. And, I got a mental Rolodex of fights in my head, and I'm like, well, and I started making a list. I want to share it with you guys. And it's lineal title changes that were absolutely dominant. Now, let me set some rules here. Number one, as I just said, it's the lineal champion. They're not title defenses. It wasn't a title fight that didn't include the lineal champion. What I mean by that is, for example, BJ Penn, Joe Daddy Stevenson, right? BJ Penn dominated and destroyed him for the lightweight title. But the previous champion, Sean Sherk, had been stripped by a drug test. So they had made that fight for the new champion. So Joe Daddy Stevenson was not the lineal champion, and BJ Penn took the title. By the time he fought Sean Sherk, BJ Penn was the sitting champion, and BJ Penn destroyed him. So it's the lineal champion, the man who beat the man who beat the man, losing their title to a dominant performance. Now, dominance doesn't mean, I'm sure some of you are thinking it, Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor, where you got clipped early. Stipe Miocic versus Fabricio Verdum, where Verdum came at him and just got hit with a shot, and that was it. Early finishes. These are about sustained dominance. Not you caught somebody early and now you're the champion. It's great, but you could argue in fights like that, I think that guy 9 times out of 10 beats that guy, and that was this guy's night. These are the kind of performances where you didn't wonder who was better. You knew who was better. And it was the lineal champion. So, here's my list of most dominant title changes of all time. So let me start out with the one that actually occurred to me when I was watching the fight. I was thinking, God, when was the last time I saw dominance like this against a sitting champion? Kamaru Usman over Tyron Woodley. That was at UFC 235, March 2nd, 2019. Kamaru Usman just owned, and I mean owned, Tyron Woodley for 5 effing rounds. Dominated him in the wrestling, dominated him in the striking, had better cardio, was stronger. Every way you can beat somebody, essentially, without finishing them. That's what Kamaru Usman did to Tyron Woodley. Now, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about this fight because Tyron Woodley, just went on a horrible slide. Never won a fight again after that. But we didn't have any indication when the fight started that it was going to be like that. He had beaten Darren Till, blew him away previously, and then Damian Maia, Stephen Thompson before that. It was this idea that hadn't, and also the first Wonderboy Thompson fight, which was a draw, was an incredible fight. Really good. Then he kind of slowed the second one down or whatever. You could argue that Tyron Woodley was maybe physically slowing down and winning more boring fights, but he's still winning. And Kamaru Usman owned him for 5 rounds. It was the emergence of really Kamaru Usman, not just as a champion, but as, I'd put him right now number 2 all time at 170 pounds behind GSP. So, but physical, strong, better, and also, remember, Tyron Woodley was a D1 wrestler. Kamaru Usman was a D2 wrestler. We didn't realize how much better Kamaru Usman's MMA wrestling was at the time, right? We knew it was good. We didn't know it was that good, where he could, destroy a guy who was an All-American. But it was the beginning of a really serious slide for Tyron Woodley, but the dominance of Kamaru Usman really took off after that. So that was a first thought when I was watching DDP get destroyed by Khamzat Chimaev. I'm like, God, man, was maybe the Kamaru Usman fight was more dominant than this? Maybe. He did land more strikes. I mean, the criticism is that Khamzat didn't do a lot with the top pressure, and Kamaru Usman was pretty active. So, first one on the list, and these are in no particular order, by the way. So, let's go kind of old school with this one. I want to know how many people remember this one. Randy Couture over Vitor Belfort. That was UFC 49, August 21st, 2004. What had happened in the previous fight, and Vitor Belfort was the sitting champion. In the previous fight, Randy Couture and Vitor Belfort threw a right hand early in round number 1 that grazed the eyelid of Randy Couture. Cut it. It was like not even a minute into round 1. And it just grazed him and cut him. Doctor looks at it. The eyelid itself is cut, which can cause eye damage. They stop the fight. Vitor Belfort's a new champion. It was a legal strike, so he didn't poke him in the eye. It just grazed him, a legal strike, caused a cut, fight couldn't continue. He's the new champion a minute into round number 1. So a lot of people went, you don't want to call a win a fluke. It was a fluke. There's just no other way to say it. Got cut early by not even a punch or an elbow or something. He grazed his eye and cut him. Vitor Belfort's a new champion. They end up rematching in the next fight, and Randy owned Vitor Belfort. Owned him. It was not close. It looked like their first fight back in the old school days. I don't know how many people know this, but they fought when they were heavyweights way back in the day in the UFC. And Randy just took him down, ground and pounded him, destroyed him, ripped the soul out of his body in their first fight. Well, this is what this fight looked like. Same thing. Randy just clinching and taking him down and pounding him into the canvas and beating him up and blooding him. And Belfort never got the range to use his speed. Nothing like that. Nothing. And the most pressing visual that I remember when I think about this fight was Vitor Belfort in the corner, sitting down on the mat like a sack of potatoes. And I remember thinking, that's bad cornering. Because one of the things about cornering, and I have cornered fighters, don't let them look defeated, right? Sit up, take a deep breath, don't look tired. He just sat there bloody on the ground, didn't even sit in the stool, and just was like, And obviously his corner's giving him advice, but I don't speak Portuguese, so I don't know what they were saying. Maybe they said, get up and don't look defeated, and he didn't stand up. I don't know. But I remember thinking, dude, you can't let your guy look this beat. Especially a guy like Randy Couture has been wrestling his entire life at the elite level. He knows defeated when he sees it, and he's going to crush you. And he continued crushing him, finally stopped at the end of round number 3. But dominant performance by Randy Couture over the sitting champion Vitor Belfort. And, Randy's better than Vitor. When they fought, he was just clearly better. In the 2 fights that actually did anything, Randy destroyed him. This was a prime Randy Couture. That Randy Couture who beat Chuck Liddell, beat Tito Ortiz, beat Vitor Belfort, I think is the best Randy Couture we've ever seen. Anyway, destroyed the champion, ended up winning the title back. So let's go with somebody you guys hopefully will remember. You never know. Cain Velasquez has 2 on this list. Let's start off with his first one against Brock Lesnar. Now, this was a comparatively quick one. It ended in round 1, but it was 4 minutes into round 1. Brock had nothing for Cain Velasquez. You got to remember, Brock had beaten Randy Couture. He had beaten Frank Mir. He had beaten Shane Carwin. But there was always this thing where, especially when Frank Mir and Randy Couture were grapplers first, everything else second. And Brock was a big, heavy, physical, strong grappler. And he could negate that kind of style. Frank Mir, people didn't see the fight in the rematch, just couldn't do anything to Brock. Brock just locked him down, sat on him, ground and pounded him out until it was over. Randy Couture clipped him short, but Randy kept going in, trying to get these takedowns. Couldn't get him on Brock. So Shane Carwin previously had hurt Brock. He probably would have won if he hadn't run out of gas. He was beating the crap out of Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar survived to the end of round number 1. And round number 2, Shane Carwin was just out of gas. He punched himself out, and Brock came back and won by arm triangle. So, but you saw the problems Brock was going to have with someone who could put striking pressure on him and negate the takedown. If you could do that, you could beat him. And Cain Velasquez, in his absolute prime, could do all of those things. All-American wrestler at Arizona State, explosive, physical, strong, dynamic, good combinations. A prime Cain Velasquez, maybe the greatest heavyweight in history. I still put Fedor above Cain, but in that little window, it wasn't quite long enough for me to put him above Fedor. But in that window where Cain was at his best and injury-free, my God, he was amazing. And Brock had nothing. Couldn't take him down, uncomfortable the whole time, was just eating punches like, it was his breakfast. Had no idea how to deal with the physical pressure. Had no idea how to deal with dynamic punches coming at him. He was just panicked. Cain took him down, boom, 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 and it was over. 4 minutes into round number 1, we had a new champion. So Brock Lesnar, sitting champion, owned by Cain Velasquez. Owned from start to finish. Once again, comparatively quick. It ended in round 1, but it didn't look fluky. It looked like, okay, this guy's really good. Brock has had his day. He had physical talent, but against really good guys, it didn't help him. So, the second one from Cain Velasquez, for people, once again, who don't remember it, although it was a big fight at the time, his rematch with Junior Dos Santos. That was at UFC 155. That was in 2012. What had happened was, if you don't remember it, Junior Dos Santos had knocked out Cain Velasquez in the first UFC on Fox show. Overhand right, clipped him, and it was over. I remember watching it. It was during a Bellator. I was backstage, and we had a TV on, and we were watching it, and it was the absolute worst because the UFC was putting a lot behind this, UFC on Fox thing. They were only showing one fight, and the fight ended in about a minute. And it's just like in TV language, that is like the worst thing you could do because you have to fill up a certain amount of airtime, period. It doesn't matter how long the fight is. So they had to do all this stuff and tap dance, and we're sitting there watching it going, oh, this is terrible. But, so Cain Velasquez loses the title to Junior Dos Santos. In their rematch, Cain Velasquez destroys Junior Dos Santos to the point of they have to stop this. This is horrible. This is going to ruin his career for the rest of his life. It went to decision. It should not have gone that far. Junior Dos Santos' face was out here. He looked like Sloth from Goonies. He was destroyed. Cain was better, faster, more accurate, more explosive, better wrestler, better cardio. The only difficulty was Cain really didn't have the pop to knock Junior Dos Santos out. So even though he was all over him, every time it looked like it might get stopped, Junior Dos Santos would do just enough to stay in the fight and keep it going. And one thing about MMA referees, unlike boxing referees, they almost never stop a fight based on cumulative damage. What I mean by this is, if you can stay on your feet and not get rocked a lot, the ref won't step in and go, okay, I've seen enough, this is over. Boxing, they will. Right? Boxing, even if a guy isn't hurt in that moment, if they see a butt whooping for God knows how many rounds, they'll step in the middle of the round and go, okay, I've seen enough, even though the fighter at that moment might not be hurt. In MMA, that hardly ever happens. Okay. Also, corners are less comfortable stopping fights in MMA than they are in boxing. In boxing, in a similar situation, round 10 of a 12-round fight, and a guy's just getting tattooed, the corner's going to go, all right, forget it, this is over. They didn't do that. So Junior Dos Santos took a beating for 25 minutes that should have been stopped way before that. Cain, once again, in that window of his absolute prime, was unstoppable, and Junior Dos Santos happened to run into that and got murked. So Dos Santos, the sitting champion, destroyed by Cain Velasquez in the rematch. Destroyed. If you haven't seen it, go check it out and check out Cain in his absolute prime. So Brock Lesnar was the sitting champion. Cain destroyed him. Junior Dos Santos was the sitting champion. Cain destroyed him. So twice he has a dominant performance against the sitting champion and wipes him out. Crazy stuff. So let's go with another short one, comparatively. Rich Franklin versus Anderson Silva. That was at UFC 64, 2006. Only 3 minutes long. But holy God, Anderson Silva looked amazing. And Rich Franklin has talked about this fight, in interviews, afterward. He's like, I thought I was just facing another guy. I didn't think I was facing, the future of the middleweight division. I didn't realize what I was walking into. And I had seen Anderson Silva in Shuto. I had seen him in Pride. I knew how good he was. But he just did this in the UFC. Like, he was really, really good and then went amazingly great. He just hit a second gear in the UFC. He had beaten Chris Lieben, blown him away in his UFC debut. And this is an era where you tended to get title fights earlier on in your career. So he just bing, 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 destroys Chris Lieben. Tough fighter, but not great on anyone's list. So that wouldn't get you a title shot nowadays. But back then, got him a title shot, and he destroyed Rich Franklin. Killed him. As soon as he got the clinch on Rich Franklin, you could see the look on Rich Franklin's face that he had never felt anything like this. He'd been in clinches before. Never anything like this. And was just getting kneed to death. And I remember him, like, what you're supposed to do in the clinch position is posture up, try to go over the top, and push the guy away. And him going, okay, I'm not going anywhere. He was trying to stand up straight. He's a big 185er, and he couldn't go anywhere. And when he did, Anderson would just rip him to the body with knees, so it makes you go down again. Now he's going to go to the head. It was like, what am I doing? What is this guy doing to me? How do I get out of this? Just like, I mean, a professional with Rich Franklin's experience just going, I don't know what to do here. And he just got murdered, knocked out in the clinch, got his nose flattened against his face. Dominant performance by Anderson Silva, and Anderson ended up being, of course, the greatest 185-pounder of all time. And I don't think there's much debate about it. But this performance where he won the title from a really dominant champion who had looked really good. Somebody in the comment section brought up David Loiseau versus Rich Franklin in terms of dominant title performance. Yeah, but he beat a challenger. This was Anderson Silva doing this to the sitting champion and destroyed him. And we were all on notice after that one. So really dominant performance. Wow. So legends in dominant performances, kind of from the old school. GSP, Matt Hughes, UFC 65. That was also in 2006 where he won the welterweight title from Matt Hughes. This wasn't just GSP announcing his greatness or kind of like taking the torch away from Matt Hughes. This was the beginning of a new era in MMA. Now, it might not be a coincidence that Anderson Silva did the same thing to Rich Franklin about the same time, where this new era was coming in that made you go, oh, crap, this sport has developed. We saw a dynamic, fluid, accurate, explosive, well-rounded fighter taking on Matt Hughes, who was a really good wrestler who could strike. Right? It was an old-school guy who relied mostly on one thing and physical dominance, taking on somebody who could do everything and do it really, really well. And halfway through round number one, we were all going, oh my God. It looked like a modern race car in a time machine going back to the 1950s and getting in a road race, getting in a NASCAR race against a car from the 1950s. That's what it looked like. Zoom, gone. And you went, okay, all these other cars are obsolete now. That's what it looked like. Matt Hughes looked like an old clunker taking on a brand new 2025 Formula One car. It wasn't close. I mean, switch kicks and angles and just everything worked. And GSP was incredible, an incredible fighter. But it was an announcement that era of Matt Hughes is over. You can't go in with what Matt Hughes has and be truly great. And GSP owned him. Was beating his ass in round number one. Almost finished him at the end of round number one. Survives for round number two. Switch head kick. Beautiful. Bang. Right to the head. Knocks Matt Hughes down and follows him up with ground and pound. And there was a new era, not just at 170, but in the sport itself. If you were there and you're my age, you went, everything's changed. Everything's changed. Matt Hughes started in the 90s, was an old school guy, mid-90s actually. So that era is done. It can't compete anymore. So a really incredible fight. GSP suddenly the man and the new champion. Last one, I wasn't going to put this on it kind of occurred to me late, but I think it's worthy of putting on the list. Dominick Cruz, Cody Garbrandt, UFC 207, that's in 2016. It's easy to forget this one because Cody Garbrandt was never Cody Garbrandt again. Everybody else on this list went on to great things, is an all-time great, whatever. The only one that's on this list that wasn't was Cody Garbrandt, who, wasn't great after this fight. But on this one night, you got to give him his flowers. He destroyed Dominick Cruz for 5 effing rounds. Dominick Cruz was the sitting champion. He's a legend. A lot of people consider him the best 135-pounder of all time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Cody had him dead to rights. There's an interesting combination in this fight where Cody's tight boxing, accurate, powerful, good combinations was just a kryptonite for this kind of loose movement style that Dominick Cruz brought. There was just no fat on any of Garbrandt's punches, and Dominick couldn't kind of confuse him with his movement. He couldn't get him off balance. He couldn't get his own offense going, and every time he did with these kind of like wide, loopy shots, Cody was right in there with slick punches and boom, took him right off his feet. For everybody who remembers him, like pointing at him when he was down, mugging on him, letting him back up again, when he probably could have jumped on him and maybe finished the fight. Dominick Cruz does not have a great guard by UFC championship standards. So you get, Dominick Cruz on his butt, you can beat him up pretty good. Never did it. preferred to mug and clown and do this, and he would stand up and he'd beat him up again. Dominick Cruz's face looked like hamburger. It was another one of those where we went, okay, Dominick Cruz's era is over. This guy's next level. This guy's next generation. Also, for people who don't remember that era, Dominick Cruz was always off with injuries. He was always getting hurt. He was always coming back and doing great things and winning titles, but Jesus, it catches up with you at a certain point. All the time off, all the injuries. And it was just like the racehorse didn't have one more race in him. He didn't. And he ran into a guy whose style was a perfect foil for his. But that was the last. It was the last great fight for Cody Garbrandt. Now, one of the greatest kind of what ifs I think in MMA is T.J. Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt. If people once again don't remember, Cody Garbrandt dropped T.J. Dillashaw early, almost finished him. If he had been able to finish him, I mean, who knows how the direction of Cody Garbrandt's career after that. The problem is that after that, obviously after the Dominick Cruz win, loses twice to T.J. Dillashaw, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font, Kai Carfin. I could go on and on and on, but he only wins 3 more times. He ends up losing 7 times. It's just he was on the downside of his career after that. How could the trajectory have been with the win over T.J. Dillashaw? I don't know, but would have been interesting to see. But that one night, God, he was dominant against a legend at 135. Had everything for him. So, that's my list. Title changes in dominant performances. Let me know in the comment section if I missed any. If there are any you want to include, let me know. I'll talk to you soon.